Dun, 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 dun,
Wow.
Welcome, everybody, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, back to the podcast where we look at movies and films. Today we are
The
here.
Halloween Spooktacular Part 2.
The moustache should be a surprise to you all, which should scare you enough to keep watching or turn the podcast off. I don't know. So
Scare you into subscribing.
subscribe if you like the podcast.
And the moustache.
And the moustache. So today we're joined by myself, Matt, Ben, and Joe.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Well, welcome
Pleasure to be
to
part
the
of this.
podcast, my friend. How are you, Joe? Tell us some of the movies you like generally, the horror movies that you like generally, and give us a little.
And how you know Ben.
And how you know Ben. Yeah, give us a
How
little
did
intro.
Me and Ben studied together.
And how you stumbled your way into our podcast.
Wow, I had the pleasure.
Yeah,
of
what are
living
you
with
doing
Ben,
here?
what am I doing? I lived with Ben for a year at university, and not every morning, often enough on mornings, we woken up by the sound of the Pirates of the Caribbean soundtrack or the Dark Knight Rises soundtrack.
The
And
Dark
I come
Knight
downstairs
Rises
to see Ben
soundtrack.
working out in the morning.
Oh,
And I'm like, well,
I'm not gonna lie,
has
that
good
is
taste in
goated.
film.
What, the Dark Knight soundtrack or the Pirates soundtrack? The Pirates
Ben, was
soundtrack's
it Kraken
fantastic.
that you'd work out to?
It was the Kraken
It would
one.
be the main thing.
I think it was the standard theme.
Yeah,
like,
just standard theme on repeat.
Which, funnily enough, we saw a Dutch builder actually playing that when he was working on stuff outside, which is something you'd typically hear in the UK streets. So, fun facts about Netherlands.
Yeah, the
that pirate soundtrack
the
is
spookiest country.
fantastic. What, the Netherlands, the spookiest
I had a very
country.
similar workout soundtrack as well. I would go Dark Knight Rises, but I do the Kraken from Pirates 2 because it's fucking awesome. I'll put it in here if I'm editing this.
It's a good build-up.
Goes hard. Ben, put it on the playlist, man.
So, do
Put it on the gym
you
playlist.
also listen to film scores when you're at the gym then?
When I was 14 and I went to the gym, yeah. But not anymore. Yeah, not for a while.
I'm not necessarily listening to film scores, but on the topic of that, like I was just going through some of my more preferred scenes in the original Halloween, and that soundtrack is, and I'm sure, I'm not being outrageously controversial here, but some of the most iconic soundtracks I have ever listened to in my life. And I'd never seen the original Halloween before this podcast when I watched it a couple of days ago. And that sort of dun 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 dun, that like resonates far more than just a movie for me. It's like an entire culture, like years and years and years of culture go by in that.
Me and
soundtrack.
Haroon listen to this podcast. Called Spooko.
Yeah.
Shout out Spooko, and their theme song is very, very derivative of the Halloween.
Incredibly.
Theme. Also, I was at Thorpe Park today, and it was spooky Halloween stuff, and all around the park, I was just like, oh, there's John Carpenter influence coming in. So pretty cool. But before we get into that, Joe, I almost forgot your name. Joe, Ben says you're a big horror buff, so I was going to ask, what are some of your favourite horror films?
My favourite horror films. In John Carpenter theme, I really like The Thing. I think it's fantastic. Brilliant.
One of the best.
Bit gory, great body horror. Yeah, really scary. I really like An American Werewolf in London, which is a brilliant British film. And more recent ones, I like Saw and Sinister and all these trashy current ones of the last 10, 15 years. I think there's a place for them in horror.
What about Terrifier? Do you like Terrifier?
Good. I want to see the third one, but I'm sure that will come at another point. The more...
Oh, I watched that recently.
The more it upsets like my mother, the more I like it generally. So, Terrifier seems like it goes down
well.
Yeah.
To be fair, my mum told me off when I told her I'd just seen Terrifier 3. She was like, don't watch horrid stuff.
Don't watch horrid stuff.
I read about that in the news.
Yeah, it's fucked up though, for real. Third one's the best one. None of them are great, but I love Art the Clown.
We actually watched the trailer for Terrifier 3 last night, and I was just saying to Joe that just from the trailer, it didn't come across as a pure horror. It actually came across as like a goofy, sort of dark comedy. Like,
Yeah.
is that actually reflective
Well,
of what it actually is?
well, he's like a mime and a clown, and he just is funny. And the actor said he took influence from Buster Keaton and Mr. Bean, I think. And you can
Scary
tell
Mr.
like it's
Bean.
so Mr. Bean. It's if Mr. Bean skinned you alive is the Terrified series.
I just want a bit of whimsy in your horror films. That sounds like
Maybe.
something nice.
It is legitimately funny.
So,
Like he will be doing the most.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Joe, do you like any good horror films?
Whoa,
Whoa, wow.
Sinister is really scary.
Thunder.
As someone who
Sinister.
struggles
I
to be
hate
scared
Sinister.
by horror films,
Joe
I think
just
Sinister's
called
one of the
it
scariest
trash
ones.
horror.
Trash horror.
Yeah, but it is still scary though. Isn't
Yeah,
it?
okay,
The
what-
Thing's good.
The Thing's fantastic, but I wouldn't even consider that horror. I consider it thriller, but let you fight amongst
No,
yourselves.
no, it's
horror.
horrifying. When the kid at the end is well,
Horrifying?
to butcher the entire family. Spoiler alert.
We've already discussed he wears a scary mask.
Yeah, the ghoul. That's a horrible face.
Yeah.
I don't fuck
Is
with Sinister.
would you consider
I think I've said this before.
would you consider
Sorry.
Smile to be in that sort of category of trashy horror sinister like movies?
Joe, that's a question for you.
Mate, I've not seen it.
Oh, you've not seen it? Oh, okay. So like,
Neither have I.
yeah, I guess Conjuring, Smile, Matt. This is very much your domain. But
Yeah.
The Conjuring,
You
I
just
quite
mentioned
trash,
like.
you just
Conjuring.
trash.
I
I
want
love
to.
The Conjuring.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
want to
think it's
defend
really
the
good.
Conjuring here because
1, 2, 3. The spin-off with the doll, yeah.
Because I've only ever seen the first one. It was when I went to Joey's place in Warwick, and because we were actually struggling to think of horror films to watch because I think we both agreed that like a lot of them just don't really feel that scary. And he said, "Oh, if you haven't seen Conjuring, we recommend it because it is actually a really scary one. And for a mainstream horror film, it is actually really scary. I think the first one at least."
The second one's good as well. Third one, sorry. Yeah, James Wan's fucking sick. I love that guy.
Yeah, I keep watching Aquaman reviews on YouTube that are far too many hours long. I don't know what to think of Aquaman, and I don't know why I care so much about Aquaman. Yeah,
I've never bothered.
I think it might be one of my favorite superhero movies of all time, but we can talk about that another occasion. For now, though, I think let's move on to the topic of Halloween. So, Ben, give us your take. Give us a little deep dive of what you thought of the movie.
Are we going original? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so
1978.
I'm just gonna give full disclosure here. I did fall asleep at around
Oh, for fuck's
at
sake.
around the like 50th or like 55th
We are an
minute mark.
incapable
And
trio. We just can't do it.
Me personally, I've never fallen asleep in any of
Matt,
these
you didn't
movies.
even watch Halloween
Never.
2. So Matt's not watched Halloween 2. Ben fell asleep during Halloween 1. And I don't know.
Wait, you didn't? Did you watch Halloween 2?
Me? Yeah. I watched both.
Rob Zombie's Halloween 2?
Yeah.
Or the original Halloween 2?
No, I watched the original Halloween 2. Right? Was that the one?
wait a
we were
minute,
supposed to
did you watch the Rob Zombie remake as well?
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Oh,
No,
no.
I watched
Wait,
the
why,
original.
why did we watch
Oh
Halloween
my
2 with
God,
Rob Zombie? We
Haroon.
watched Halloween 1 with
Uh-oh.
Rob Zombie.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
correct.
yeah, so
That's
it's-
correct.
Wait.
Haroon's done it wrong.
Oh, I done it wrong. Well, Matt, you didn't even watch it. You can't look at me like that.
You know, you weren't meant to watch it.
Halloween 2 is going to be like a bonus. What we meant to do was an original Halloween and then Rob Zombie Halloween, which is the remake of Halloween.
Which you did ask, and I did clarify, and you did say yes to, and then you went and did the opposite.
Yeah.
And you didn't even watch the right. The Halloween 2 in question was meant to be the 2009 one, and you went and watched the 1981. I don't know when it came out. It's probably 1980.
Well, this is awkward.
Well, this is off to a great start. I guess we'll be discussing
Oh, so
Halloween 1,
you
and
two have
two
both
of us will be
seen-
discussing Rob Zombie's
Yeah, so you
Halloween.
two have both seen the two movies that we had agreed that we would watch, and I watched the one that wasn't agreed that we'd seen.
No one ever
No one
even suggested we watch.
Halloween 2 comes up so much in the chat, but I guess it's just the Rob Zombie one. All right.
Yeah, it's the other Halloween 2. It's this Halloween 2 here
Okay. All right.
by Robert Zombie. So you didn't watch Rob Zombie's Halloween from 2007?
No.
Okay, this is great. So one fell asleep, and
Kind of
the
it.
other
So
one
I,
didn't.
I fell asleep, but I kept on waking up whenever you'd have some loud banging noises or there was a sudden
Mm.
introduction music. And I think for the final 15, 20 minutes I was awake. Uh, so I did put it this way, I think I saw enough of it to know whether I liked the film or not. I think part of the reason why I fell asleep was not just because I was tired, but because I did find it a wee bit boring. So I I kept on asking Joe throughout the viewing whether this was actually meant to be a horror or a dark comedy, and because I personally found a lot of it really, really funny. Because I think if you watch a horror film like the original Halloween today, knowing what contemporary horror looks like, I think if you didn't know that that film was made in, say, 1979, I would think that is definitely somebody's attempt doing a film like Scary Movie, for example. And I think
Mm.
I got this impression really early on when
That's so rude.
so rude. Well, it's just because really early
Scary
on,
movie.
you see Michael's POV and he's going into his sister's room, and she turns around and says, "Michael, what are you doing here?" Then he suddenly starts stabbing her, and it's like the way she's reacting, like it's just completely different to the way you'd see it in an ordinary horror film these days. And I just thought that that for me, as well as a number of other things in the film, just made me, well, mainly laugh at it really. Not that I didn't find Rob Zombie's version funny as well. I actually found that one funnier, but that's because it felt like, well, I think we spoke about it before. I think the humor was just a lot more up my street. Um, but yeah, so when it comes to the original Halloween, I thought the music was really impressive. It actually reminded me a lot of I forget his name, but the guy who did the score for The Exorcist, did Tubular Bells.
Oh
Is it
yeah.
Mike Oldfield? I think it's
I don't
Mike
know the
Oldfield. He
exact,
did the
but I
No.
know the exact sound you're talking about.
yeah, it did remind me a lot of that.
Of a synthesizer.
Yeah, pretty much. But the fact that he was featuring for a horror film as well. Um, yeah, I thought I think there were some moments that I'm sure if you watched it in the cinema at the time, like for the first time, it would have been scary. But I think I think the problem is that because I've just seen so many horror films, and because there's no longer that element of surprise, I just think that the bar for me personally is just a lot more higher, so a lot higher when it comes to actually being scared by it. But no, I think as a film that was made in 1979, yeah, I'd say I was pretty impressed.
8,
Wait, it was not 1979,
78,
78,
I
78.
believe.
Even more impressive then. Yeah. Joe, your
1 year
thoughts?
more impressive.
My thoughts. I enjoyed it. I think I found it less funny than you. More scary at points.
Had you both seen it before or no? Or
I
either of
think we
you?
watched this in fourth year.
I've never watched it with you before.
Definitely not.
No.
Maybe I watched it with Nate. I thought I'd seen it with somebody. Maybe I've seen it with somebody else from uni. But I thought you and I had seen it before. But I doubt I could remember very much of it. Um,
I'd watched it before in the past. I knew what was going to happen, but
mhm.
I enjoyed it anyway. I think because it builds suspense for a lot of the film, that doesn't have to surprise you to be scary.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
And a lot of it's just quiet and people walking around
Yeah,
with someone following, which I think is scary. So
that's fair. That's fair.
I agree with that.
What
I
do you
agree with
think,
that
Matt?
profoundly.
Oh, really? What do
Sorry,
you think?
yeah, no. Joe, you said a lot of it is just sort of people walking around, like this slow build up of atmospheric horror with a very quiet and suspenseful take on the genre. I thought it was amazing. I thought it was really, really cool. I liked how the scenes sort of take their time, and there are these really gradual build ups, and then it pulls back, and then it builds up, and then it pulls back. I think it flows really nicely. I was really shocked actually by the fact that it was fundamentally an incredibly suspenseful and chilling movie rather than a bombastic murder spree crime thriller that I thought it would be like. I'd obviously never seen the movie before, but I just thought it was just some serial killer going around stabbing people like it was Scream. But no, it was actually very tasteful in a lot of ways, incredibly tasteful. So there's some of the scariest shots aren't big jump scares. they're just long takes and zoom ins. For instance, there's a moment where a character is looking beyond into a dark room, and then just sees a figure that's covered in a bedsheet with some glasses on, and that shot just holds for so long. It's terrifying. But then again, I was watching it. I was watching it in this room in the dark by myself. I was terrified by that. Really scared. And it got me in a way that I think a lot of horror movies that I've seen nowadays, or back decades, have never really gotten me before. So in that sort of realm, I was I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was unique, one of a kind, and thoroughly enjoyed that. What do you think,
Just
Matt?
on that, because I know that one horror film that you and I both watched recently, albeit you watched in the cinema and I watched it on streaming when it came out afterwards, was The First Omen. I remember you said that you thought that was terrifying.
Yes,
And
I did.
I think I told you that I thought there were I think there was like 2 or 3 jump scares, but beyond that, I didn't think there was much of a scary atmosphere to it. Would you say that you're somebody who tends to be like scared more easily by horror films than not, or or
Hmm.
something else?
So with the first, for me, yes, I am very scared by horror movies. I'm
Yes.
very
Rude bitch.
easily scared. I am an absolute cat when it comes to anything scary. I'm jumping off my fucking paws and I am scurrying away, and it's always been like that. I am truly scared of all horror movies.
You
But
see,
I love it.
I envy
It's
you
really
because I remember
exciting.
what that used to feel like, and I remember like with you'd watch a horror film like with your
Yeah,
mates,
no,
you'd come
I've still
downstairs
got
and you'd be like,
that.
"Oh, watching a horror film," and then like you put the blanket up and then like you turn the lights off. Whereas
No,
now, I just find it's way harder to actually get scared by something.
the thrill is very easily there for me, but yeah, I think we bring up The First Omen, and I saw that movie. I thought it was fantastic. It's pretty rare that you see like.
I think you've claimed that to be the scariest movie you've ever seen to me before.
Yes, I watched that in the cinema. I watched it with my girlfriend, and I had mostly my eyes covered like this, looking through my hands like an absolute infant. But in fairness, but it's horrible. It's a really incredibly visceral movie. Like a lot of the shots, for instance, there's one scene of a nun who's about to do a cheeky bit of self-immolation jumping off the top of a church where she's drenched herself in gasoline, and you can see how wet her hair is, and she's got this sick twisted smile, and she's staring with the whites of her eyes right off into the distance, and the camera work is so good in that moment that it's lethal. It's just really good. Yeah, no, I love that.
I think the part that you mentioned that you saw in the cinema that really scared you, and I think even when I was watching it on my TV at home, did scare me, is when that nun's locked in a dark room and she just looks in the corner. And then for the first few seconds, I don't know why the camera's just steady there, and then you see this person just rising from this really crouched position. I thought, oh, this
Yeah.
is the scene Haroon was referring to.
Yeah, no, it's that scene where she's looking into the abyss.
I remember that.
The abyss looks back at her. She's looking into the abyss and looks back at her, and it cuts literally like 10 times to black and then her face and black and her face, and the suspension builds and builds and builds. And then, I mean, retrospectively, it's so funny because it seems almost comedic now that this balded priest appears from the dark like this, as that scene continues. But in the cinema, I was terrified of that. It was horrendous. Yeah.
Do you know what's funny? The scariest scene in that to me was when she goes looking for the documents downstairs, and nothing even happens in that scene. But that's the sort of stuff that gets me, where I'm just sort of like, oh god, now's a bad time to be caught.
Is that the scene where she's on her way downstairs, and then upstairs there's the nun that's being prepared to be a nun?
Yeah.
And there's
yeah.
that.
Mm-hmm.
So she's got the scarf that's being strapped on her head, and then as she's going downstairs, the priest is doing something else, but everything that's being done upstairs to the nun that's about to become a nun or something like that is done with such an amount of force and conviction. I think you'd have to viewers or Matt or Ben overlay that clip over this scene, and you'll sort of get what we're talking about. But yeah, I think you and Ben
Yeah,
actually
that
have
scared
a
me.
pretty similar taste when it comes to what scares you in horror.
Me and Ben.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know about that, but because I found Halloween scary. I haven't spoke about Halloween yet, so I'll do my little spiel. So I watched Halloween when I was like, I want to say 15 or something, right? It was me and my mate. It was what Ben was talking about earlier, where you and your mate have a sleepover and you watch a scary movie. But
It's all the best times.
I don't know. I was at that age where I hadn't seen many 70s movies and I found it very goofy. And you know, when you're watching something with someone and you don't know if they're vibing with it and it sort of like throws off your vibe. Um, so I couldn't get into it properly. And I found it a bit goofy. And I hadn't watched it since. So rewatching it this time, at the start, I was like, yeah, I can see why this is a bit goofy. A couple shots stand out to me, like while it is a creepy shot, when he's watching her in school and she's looking out the window. I like that in concept, but I just find it so funny how much of his neck you can see, like under the mask and between the boiler suit. I was just like, that's just a guy stood there so goofily, and that mask is so big on his head. And probably the ghost shot as well.
That's so funny. Well,
Ben slept through the
It
ghost
is
shot,
so
and I was like,
funny.
Ben, you can't.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
still come up.
yeah.
We're rewriting.
Yes, I slept through it. He rewound it and said, "Right, Ben, you've got to watch this scene. You've got to watch this scene." I was sitting there. I was thinking, just as like this leering incel is just like put like a fucking sheet over his face.
It's the
Going,
glasses.
oh.
Oh,
I
and
just
when
couldn't
he's
do.
like when he like really poorly hides behind a bush, like he's stood there and then he's like, oh, there's that man again, and then he just like just steps behind the bush. I was like, all right, this is pretty goofy. But pretty much as soon as the killing started, with the girl going to the car, it's locked. She goes and gets the car keys. I'm suddenly just like on the edge of my seat, and I remembered that kill, and I remembered every single thing in this movie that happened. But it still managed to get me every time. I'm like, fucking hell, it's so viscerally scary. Um, and like basically the stuff that I liked most about it was, oh fucking hell, sorry, Siri keeps thinking I'm talking to it. Um the stuff I find scariest is looking in the shadows to see which like hole Michael's gonna pop out
That's
of.
what I was talking about with your overlap of love of horror between you and Ben, because I think we were discussing Longlegs
Right.
a while ago, and it was sort of the things in the background, the things that you couldn't really see,
Mm.
those the uncertainty of those shots. That's what sort of gets you. Is that right? Because that doesn't really get me so much.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you mentioned Longlegs, and Longlegs definitely does this well. But I think the film that I think does this best is It Follows. The fact that the creature that's
Yes.
going after the protagonist, the fact that it could be anybody, can take the shape of any person, and that all you know is that it's slowly walking towards you, and it's that lack of knowledge, the lack of certainty as to what the monster looks like. And there are plenty of scenes where you just see two people talking, and in the background you just see somebody slowly walking towards the girl. Only it turns out that it isn't the monster most of the time. But it's the nature of being on edge and just not knowing if that is the monster
Mm.
that I think really gets me. Yes, I guess lack of knowing.
And it and in relation to this film, all the scenes where Michael Myers is clearly dead, and then you just know you're just waiting for him to sit back up, like that stuff, that does get me as well. You're just like, yeah, yeah, he's been stabbed, he's been shot, but he's gonna fucking sit back up. That's the shit I love as well.
See, I think for me, because it's never actually made clear that he's this supernatural entity, that he is meant to be just this human being, that whenever he'd get up again, I, I think by the time he got to when he was lying on the floor, it's after she's hiding in the wardrobe, and
Yeah,
she gets him there, and I
which was a
think,
fucked scene as well.
yeah, and I
The
just think,
wardrobe
okay,
bit
surely at this
scared
point,
the
like
fuck
he
out of
is,
me.
done and dusted. And then when he rises up again, I remember, like, I think you were pretty spooked by it, but I think by that point I was just like, oh, come on. Like,
I think it almost makes it scarier,
Well,
but
they
it is just a
do you
guy,
think? Like,
and he keeps getting back up.
yeah.
oh, I just
There is
think
nothing supernatural
I-
about
Well, they
it.
call him the boogeyman 100 times, and his doctor's like he's pure evil.
Sounds
Every
like a normal
sentence, this
bloke.
is not a man, he's
no, but like
pure
he's
evil.
it's like metaphysically he's a human. Like he's not some
Yeah,
gargoyle
but that is
risen from
what's
hell. I think
But
that's what I find so. Like
I
we
think
spoke about the suspense for disbelief in episode 4. I think the issue is that by this point I just think, oh, like come on, like it sounds really strange given this horror film, but it's almost like I'm thinking, get real. Like if he is gonna just keep rising up, can we can we not make him a human? Like, do you know what I mean?
okay. I have a couple of things to say on that front. I kind of need a piss though. Matt, do you want to just talk? I'll be back.
We can just pause.
All right, we'll
Yeah,
pause.
we can just pause.
Okay.
If I have something to say, then I'll rant. But I'll talk to you guys because Haroon didn't even watch this. But this is what I find interesting when we're going to get into Rob Zombie's Halloween, because people have a problem with it humanizing Michael Myers so much, but I sort of like it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I
Because
was telling Joe that he's definitely made out to be a better person, not necessarily a good person, but a better person than the original.
at least a person. Do you know what I mean? Like we see him for. Well, we'll get into it, but I do find it interesting because it's something I love about the original Halloween, but it's also something I like the change of because they do keep going on and on. I'll wait for Haroon to come back before I say this because this is
Yeah. But you didn't watch
this
it.
is maybe
We
something.
can technically just talk now for the 5
No, but
minutes.
this is about the original. This is about the original.
Oh, he's back now. Yeah.
Like,
Right. Yeah, I'll say what I was going to say. So they do keep going on about, he's not human, he's an evil, he's pure evil, he's the boogeyman. But what's scary is that he is human. He is just a person, and I find it so scary when his mask gets like lift off his face, and you see it's just a guy, and then he like puts it right back on.
Doesn't he have supernatural powers?
Did you
What?
guys think that the face looked weird?
No, not in this first one.
Yeah, I
mean, the guy's got a funny
maybe
face.
he does
Yeah,
have
funny
supernatural
face.
powers.
I see. I
Well,
thought, but he didn't look.
and-
He didn't
and
look
also,
handsome.
like-
I didn't think he looks weird. You know.
do you expect him
think-
to be handsome?
Alright.
No.
Okay.
No, but there's in like it's not like when the mask was taken off. What's the name of that guy from the Goonies film?
Sloth.
Sloth. Yeah. It's not like he looked like him, which you might expect.
He's got like a bulbous eye. I don't know. That's the only sort of thing I was like. He looks like Richard Ramirez. If anyone knows who that fucking freak is.
I don't know who he is.
The Night Stalker. He's a serial killer.
Oh, right.
Freak looking guy. That was probably around that time as well. Haroon, you were saying something about him being supernatural.
Yeah. I think that he definitely is supernatural just because he can withstand so much and keep going. But I wouldn't really generally be stuck on that point because the movie gives.
Well, do you know about the sequels?
Yeah, I know about one
Have
sequel.
you looked into the sequels at all? But the subsequent sequels keep trying to like give him supernatural explanations and shit. So like he becomes like a devil cult. Like people keep like resurrecting him and shit for some demon cult. But I think that shit sucks. And do you guys also know that it was originally meant to be an anthology series? So
Ooh.
John Carpenter
didn't know
didn't
that.
want. Yeah, so John Carpenter didn't want sequels to it, and if they were going to do sequels, he wanted it to be different stories. So Halloween 3 is just some random story, but they made him do Halloween 2. He didn't direct it, but I think he wrote it. They made him do Halloween 2, which is a continuation. But what was my point? I think it adds to the creepiness of it to me when he does just keep defying death and then just disappears at the end. And I'm just like, if they left it there at the end where he's just disappeared, that could have been like the most goated ending of any horror movie ever, where you're just like, fucking hell. You just like throw your hands up, you're like, oh, what the fuck? But it's like left to your imagination. But they come back 13 more times to explain how he keeps surviving 6 shots to the
I
head.
think with regards,
how many Halloween films are there?
quite a few, including the Rob Zombie ones.
I think there's 8, and then 2 Rob Zombies, and then 3 David Gordon Green remake reboot ones.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
I think there's 13 total.
absurd. They
number.
have milked this dry. So what I was going to say with regards to the sort of creepy vibe this movie gives, and I think what makes it kind of special for me is that there's lots of really long takes where the girls are walking down streets and they're just talking, they're just yammering on. But as they're talking, as they're yammering on, there's this thing in the back of your mind that's just like, oh my God, what is going to happen in this film? And they're talking, and it's like there's no soundtrack either. They're just walking and talking, and the camera follows them, and it's really head on, and it's like dead quiet basically. And they're talking about the most superfluous nothing that it's like nothing that at all. You're not even getting anything from these people. So I don't know. It just sort of encourages you subconsciously to really consider the premise and the continuation of the movie during
there's just
these
like a
really
lot of
long
like
shots.
breathing that would just go on.
Yeah. Especially when obviously
You're just
Mike
like, where
Myers
is he?
sees people walk away and he's just breathing heavily. I think one thing I was going to raise talking about this, and I was thinking about it on the drive home from work today, was how do you guys sort of consume this in terms of like, I don't know, not to get too pretentious, but like temporally consuming this? Are you consuming this in a mindset of like right now, 2024? Is this good, or are you consuming this?
I try think about being in the 70s.
Yeah,
like,
I do too. But
try
is
to
that
put
the
myself
wrong way
back
of doing
in
it?
there.
Or there's no right way, surely.
No, because you can't. If you, I was listening to a podcast about this, and someone said like they watched it in the cinema, and someone was like laughing along, and she had said, "Sorry, Ben, you were doing this." But she said like, "Oh, you think you're so clever because you're viewing this in 2023. Like you think you're cleverer than the movie because you're viewing this in 2023, now 2024." So I try not to do that because you will just find it goofy because cinematic language has changed an incomprehensible amount. Well, it's comprehensible, I guess. You got to just watch Halloween 1978 versus 2007, but it's just a completely different art form. Really, it's evolved so much.
Is it I don't think it's completely.
You can't expect
different
Smile
art form.
2. It's changed so much, bro. You should have watched Halloween 2007, man.
Yeah, I guess I should have.
I guess you
I've
could
seen
add that as
plenty
well,
of
'cause-
very recent horror movies.
By all means.
But none of them have the patience,
Yeah, that's
really,
the
unless
thing.
they're directly homaging.
Yeah, I think
Anyone that does, you're just like, oh, they're doing a 70s movie. Like, not horror, but like The Holdovers recently is so strongly baked into 70s film language.
I think there is something to be said
Really
about that.
Yeah, because you find it funny, and like you say, it's like scary movie, where these scary movies, sort of, it's evolved and it's making fun of all these tropes, whereas Halloween was invented these tropes almost.
Yeah, and that's the issue because I don't want to slander or slate John Carpenter because I think John Carpenter also made one of my favorite horror films, which is The Thing, which, funny enough, I didn't realize that The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, was actually a remake of the original.
They watch it in this.
Yeah, everyone's watching it.
Yeah, everyone's watching it.
I was hoping in Rob Zombies that they'd, because they were watching a movie in Rob Zombies, I was hoping that they'd be watching John Carpenter's The Thing, but they're not.
Yeah,
What
that'd
a wasted opportunity.
And if someone does a remake of Rob Zombies, they watch the remake of the remake of The Thing.
Yeah. 2011, The Thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be good.
No, but because I don't want to disrespect John Carpenter too much because there's definitely, like, I think going back to what you were asking, Haroon, about how to watch horror films. I think with me, I guess if there was a particular mindset that I was going into watching a horror film with, I guess it would be watching it in 2024. But it's not as if I go into it with the intention of that. It's more like I go into it hoping to be scared. I think because of how many horror films I've seen, and also the fact I've watched Scary Movie, like you said, which basically makes fun of all these tropes. I think because of that, I just can't.
Well, even Scream itself, which is, I
Oh,
always find this fucking annoying that Scary Movie is parodying an already parody movie, Scream. Um,
So I was going to
but
say
yeah, Scream
I
itself
love
is
Scream, and Scream we definitely did watch together.
Scream's brilliant.
And I'm a big fan of what Wes Cramer does. And there's another film that I've already mentioned to you. I'm not sure if I mentioned it to you guys, but it's called Red Eye. It stars Cillian Murphy and Rachel McAdams.
ah great film.
Really good, and like that, I'm not even sure if I'd call that horror. It's definitely it's at least a
It's like a
thriller.
thriller.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah, it's
thriller
pretty.
comedy,
It's very
but
tense.
yeah, and that's the thing. I think in that film, I am a little bit on edge, especially towards the end when Cillian Murphy's running around the house trying to find Rachel McAdams.
Hmm.
But at the same time, it's really funny, and I think, and what I like about that was that it's deliberate. Like Wes Cramer's deliberately trying to
It's
be
a very
funny, but
funny escalation.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But no, I mean, I think I'm sure this would have been scary had you been watching in the '70s. And not only that, like clearly you guys found it quite scary as well. But I think, yeah, I think the problem is that once I see it, once I see these tropes made fun of, I just struggle to take it seriously afterwards, which is a shame because I would actually like to be scared by more horror films because it would lead to less disappointment. Yeah.
Have you ever watched any older ones in the cinema? Any older horror movies?
No, but I have seen older horror films than this, and I did watch The Exorcist in second year, and I might have actually watched that with you as well because I think a lot of us did at the time, and we all found that really scary actually, and
Yeah,
I personally
Exorcist is
found that
very.
scary. I haven't seen it since then, so maybe that will no longer be the case. But I do remember thinking that The Exorcist was genuinely scary.
Yeah. No, sorry, Haroon's dying to talk.
No, I'm really not. I'm enjoying the discourse.
Oh, fair. Um, I would say, yeah. I don't know. Cinema gives it a unique vibe because you just can't help but be immersed. So I watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre in the cinema, and again, that was another one I'd seen when I was like 14 or 15, and I was like, goofy as fuck. Like, I don't care about this. It's not scary.
See, that one I
But
do
watching it in
find
the cinema,
scary.
it scared the fuck out of me, man. Like, it disturbed me to the
Oh,
core.
got it.
Um,
Okay. I'm gonna mute myself whilst I try and find Texas Chainsaw Massacre viewings in the cinema because I have been dying.
It's on Halloween.
I have been dying to watch this
in
film.
Prince Charles Cinema.
I seen
Do that
a
shit.
YouTube video just talking about why it was banned in the UK for so long, and they
Was it?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I maybe don't quote me completely on this, but it was certainly banned in a number of countries. And
Yeah, I can. We banned a lot of shit.
But-
We banned Evil Dead.
uh,
Goofy as fuck.
but I think the reason, like, is there much gore and much serious, like,
Nope.
there's not, is there? But there's a lot of like really horrific visual things that dig into your subconscious with Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Not that I've seen, just from these sort of reviewers that have told me non-spoiler reviews of it.
Yeah.
And from
It's such a vibe as well. Like, it's such like a grimy vibe. It's fucking disgusting. Like, it's truly fucking foul.
Well, there's that famous
But
shot
it's
at the
not
end
gory.
when the woman's getting away, and you just see the silhouettes of the guy with the chainsaw against the sunset, and just that whole. Funnily enough, it reminds me a little bit of Bram Stoker's Dracula when you see him on the battlefield at the beginning. But it
Yeah,
is
right.
actually really scary. I think the entire way through, and the whole like the house is really dark, and just the noise is
All
really
the
overwhelming.
bones when she's like Haroon, don't listen, but when she's like going through the bones, when she's like
Oh,
keeps finding the
yeah.
bones, I'm just like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, no,
The bones.
Halloween is genuinely scary. It is also not Halloween. Texas
Texas Chainsaw.
Yeah.
Haroon, it's on 3 times in the next month. It's on the 25th, the 29th, and the 31st. You're muted still, Haroon.
that's at 12:30 midday. It looks like at the Prince Charles.
It's on at 9 on the Tuesday,
9 a.m.
9 p.m.
on Tuesday.
Perfect timing.
On Tuesday, the 29th of October.
Does sound good. I might have to watch it.
Just do it.
I'm not
man. You have to
watching
do
Texas
it.
Chainsaw Massacre on anything else except film in the cinema.
Yeah, do that at the end of the month. I promise you, you will
Yeah.
have the spookiest time of your life.
There's what was that ranked list that I showed you? Was it the BFFC? No,
Variety. Oh,
no,
there was a list recently, a variety list. I think,
nah, not variety.
Of,
It's
horror movies.
God, it's like
I know the one you're talking about.
yeah, there's Mad Max in there. They threw that in. The best one is like this French movie,
Sight and Sound.
Sight and Sound. Yes.
Is Mad Max considered a horror film?
No, not horror film. Just greatest films of all
No.
time. The BFI
Best of all time.
best movies of all time. And Texas Chainsaw Massacre is in there, and Mad Max Fury Road is also in there. For whatever that means.
Well, funnily enough, I think Quentin Tarantino has spoken about the films that he regards as perfect movies. Like there's just nothing wrong with them. I think Texas
Sin
Chainsaw
City's in
Massacre
there.
is one of the ones that he cited.
Yeah, he talks about Texas Chainsaw Massacre,
Sin
Sin City,
City.
yeah, and Lawrence of Arabia. Haven't seen that yet. That's supposed to be incredible, but
Have you seen that?
Yeah, good film.
Oh, I
Not
really,
very scary, but
I've never seen
yeah, I
that.
really want to watch it.
magnificent visuals. Yeah, it's nice.
Any more notes on Halloween?
I love the
Aside
car
from-
scene. The multiple scenes in the car where he's following in the background. You assume it's him, and they're having a conversation.
Oh my god!
And it's just like a car.
Him driving is so funny.
It's
The
so
fact that
funny.
Michael Myers can drive.
I don't know, it just really made me laugh. Like, it's terrifying but entertaining at the same time.
I think it's also really funny when the
Someone
car
must
just
have
goes
told him how to
past and you
drive.
just see the mask just looking over, just like this is really creepy.
And it's such like a dad.
Yeah. That's the thing, another thing about the film I find funny. Yeah.
Haroon, any more notes?
I mean, not really. Like, I think I was going to make a comment on how you mentioned that the language of these sort of older horror movies isn't the language that's presented nowadays. For instance, older movies aren't really afraid to take their time, but I kind of disagree with that in an extent. Like, we still have The Witch, which is, it takes its time for the entire runtime, arguably, and we have so many like
Yeah, there's obviously outliers, but I'm talking more generally and in like mainstream
of course, yeah,
sense.
yeah.
The Witch is scary though, and I'm not sure. Like, I get what you mean about it taking its time, but I think what's so
But
scary
I don't
about
think
that
it's like a
is
70s vibe.
But you don't actually see
It takes its time.
the witches. I mean, I guess you do at the end.
You do. No, you see them at the beginning. They mince a baby in a fucking pestle and mortar right at the beginning of the movie.
Do they?
That was good.
Oh, shit.
Yes.
No, I don't remember
That's
that.
nice to hear.
Okay, maybe, so between the
Sorry, it
beginning,
happens.
so between the beginning and the end, you don't see the witch at all, and like the rest of it's all on the paranoia. Like, I think that's what I find quite scary, especially when when the baby goes missing and she just looks up into the woods and you just can't see anything. I think it's that whole atmosphere
That
where you just
movie is
don't know what's
fucked.
going on.
I hate that. I hate
Yeah,
that
one of the
exists.
scariest movies ever.
I hate that it exists and I love it.
It's a good
Sick
film.
fuck.
I'm looking
It's
forward to his version
fantastic
on Nosferatu as well. That should be really good.
Oh, me too.
is that soon?
Me
Is that
too.
Robert Eggers? Nosferatu? Surely not.
It's coming
Yeah,
out on Christmas
December.
Day of all days.
Yeah.
Christmas Day.
Love it.
Like, not 31st of
Um,
October, nope, 25th of December.
Yeah, I'm glad we got a bit of time.
You're kidding me, I'm
separation
sorry,
between
Willem
having
Dafoe,
watched two back-to-back
Bill
Draculas.
Skarsgård.
Yep.
Willem Dafoe and Bill
Funnily enough, it was-
Skarsgård in my Robert Eggers
Oh
fucking
yeah, he's
Nosferatu movie. Are you kidding me? This is going to be the best
Harry
movie
Styles
I've
was initially
ever
meant to
seen.
be in it.
Now Nicholas Holt's in it, right?
Yeah, Harry Styles off
Yeah,
the back of
that'd be
his
great.
Dunkirk acting skills.
Sorry to, don't worry,
I
darling.
don't think Harry Styles is
Um,
actually that bad. I think he's just.
Fantastic.
I think he's
Like,
fine.
did you really like him?
I'll die on this. Brilliant.
Like, I think he's fine. Like, he's not.
I watched Don't Worry, Darling, and I thought he was good in that as well.
Bill Skarsgård.
Is that the one with
Willem
Florence
Dafoe,
Pugh? Came out recently.
Nicholas Hoult.
Yeah,
What do you think
yeah,
of
it
that
got
film?
shit on.
generally?
Everyone was like, "This is the shittest thing." Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, it got so panned. But I was just like, yeah, it's fine. It's kind of funny. I like it's riffing on Jordan Peterson, which I find hilarious. And it does it well, and it's a funny like natural conclusion to that sort of ideology. Not to get into a twist or anything. There's a twist.
Watch Magnolia.
Did you watch it, Ben?
Anyone else?
I still haven't seen it, but I do want to.
Yeah, fair. It's fine. It's good. It's good time.
It's funny you say that because I think I did listen to Commode's review, and I think he said that a lot of people were rinsing Harry Styles, and he said, but he's fine. And I think he said the film was also fine.
He was not bad.
I think Mark Commode's an interesting character. Like Ben, you brought him up near, I think, before we even started this podcast, where we'd be on work calls, you talking about Mark Commode. And then I started watching clips here and there, but then I only started watching proper reviews the last few weeks. And I went out to drinks with some work people, and one of them had mentioned that the only reason they got into movies was because of Mark Commode and Simon Mayo. By the way, I own a copy of Simon Mayo's copy of the first Itch book. He visited my school and signed it for me. Met him in person. Had no idea.
So just on that, because I was curious as to find out why he was visiting your school.
He was just promoting his book series, his trash book series. They're the Itch book series, and it's about like this kid who's like oh so clever, who knew how to do chemistry and made a nuclear reactor in his back garden. Sounds interesting, I guess. Like that sort of.
Fucking hate Simon Mayo, man.
All right.
What is he doing there?
I don't know.
This is a fuck Simon Mayo podcast.
I like Simon
hates
Mayo.
his literature. I hate his screenplay.
Strange his inclusion with Simon with Mark Commode. Like
he doesn't watch any of the movies, and he's just like, oh yeah, that sounds weird. Every time.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know why he's there.
He's a good interviewer.
Okay.
I think that's the whole point.
no good
the
for
fact
a
that he
film
hasn't seen the
podcast.
films, therefore he can't comment on what they're like. So that it means when he interviews the director, he doesn't have that awkward kind of stance that a Commode.
Right, I hate your film.
Yeah.
Is that what? Yeah.
But like, just imagine Commode interviewing Zack Snyder. Like that's not going to go down well.
Yeah, I was going to say this.
Yeah. Like it's always Zack Snyder.
I love Zack Snyder though. I ride for him.
I think is I don't like his movies, but I like who Zack Snyder is as a person, and that's
he's a great.
He's a good guy. I love him.
I like a lot of his movies.
I actually don't think his movies are as bad as people make them out to be, because I think a lot of people hate on them, and I think a lot of them are actually just fine. Like I think the way a lot of people talk about some of his DC films, they're not that good, but they're not as bad as people make them out to be.
I've always said that his biggest problem is that he's American.
Yeah, if he was French,
he just loves guns and boobs too much.
Oh, you're referring to Sucker Punch? Because that, funny enough, is a film that Mark
every single one of his movies. Actually, I would say
Batman v Superman as well. Like he just likes guns. He can't help himself. He likes violence and guns.
It's this really cool moment,
slow motion and boobs.
Where
if he was European, he'd be a great filmmaker.
There's this great moment in an interview where the interview is like, so Batman's not supposed to kill, and he's like, yeah, well, he's supposed to shoot the car blows up.
You sort of get around it.
The helicopter comes
That's
over,
murder,
and
buddy.
on the car, and the car blows up. It happens by proxy. It's like, yeah. Cool.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Just by proxy,
that's still murder.
If
you shoot a car and it blows up, that's murder.
If I just edge off
and that does happen to
out my window
well.
with my elbow,
and I think, like you said, Matt, I think we
were talking about this in the Batman Begins.
Yeah, I think in episode 3 when you pointed out, I know it's been done to death.
If you burn someone's house down,
ninjas died.
That's
and then when I was actually going back and looking at the B-roll, I realised, oh shit, yeah, actually, Matt's right. Actually, our 3 bodies just go.
There's one.
Yeah. And it's not just that. Like, you can look at the Dark Knight as well. You see that there are a bunch of vehicles that start turning over and get crushed. And even though you never actually see like the bodies, you think, yeah, there's no way somebody actually survived that. But in Batman vs Superman, it is a lot more explicit. Like he is deliberately shooting people and like running them over.
He stabs people. He slams people's head into the wall, leading to a bloody splatter.
There's that shot where he's ground and pounding someone as well.
He throws. He knocks a grenade out of someone's hand and then throws like 2 more people onto that grenade. Anyway, we're too sidetracked, but this is a Halloween podcast, not a Zack Snyder podcast.
But just on what you were saying, Haroon, you mentioned Mark Commode, and some of your work colleagues were saying
then we went
that
way
he is the person who got them into film.
Fucking brand there, but go on.
you're saying
Yes.
about Mark Commode, how you were colleagues
Oh,
were saying
it's
that
me
he got him into
talk.
film.
Me talk now.
Yeah. Like you were saying something
Maroon
before we got
talk.
sidetracked.
What was I going to say? Blah blah blah. Mark Commode, Simon Mayo, woman to film. Yes. Just my thoughts on Simon Mayo generally. I think that personally doesn't have, from what I've seen so far, I haven't seen all of his takes. But
Mark Commode, not Simon Mayo.
just Mark Commode. Just seems like he's just somebody that talks very quickly and it comes off as intelligent, but it absolutely isn't. Very much a Russell Brand sort of figure in my eyes. Like he's not really
Brand?
saying much, but just
That's harsh.
Nah, you're wrong on this, unfortunately.
superfluously being smart in front of people that don't look into
Yeah,
it.
you got.
Maybe
watch
I
more.
haven't seen more.
He's not that.
He just seems like he's giving
Yeah,
very
you should-
basic takes. He's like he's I don't know about film school, but it is like he's a pretentious first year film school teacher, maybe.
Funnily enough, he didn't
He's
actually
not
study film. He
pretentious.
studied, I think, English literature.
Not pretentious.
And I think when he did his,
Like,
and he's got a PhD,
basic.
and I think that might
pretentious.
technically still be in English literature, but I think he focused on, I think he focused on British horror in his PhD.
Cool.
So yeah, definitely up your street. But no, I should say the reason why I like Mark Commode is because I think when I first came across him, which would have been when I was in my early to mid-teens, I thought it was interesting that you could actually have somebody who not only did this but also did it as a profession, who was actually critiquing films and giving his takes on it. And
I think it's sad though.
I wouldn't
really,
say that I
isn't it?
always agree with
Like that's your job.
what.
It's like you don't make movies, you just watch them and then have your opinion.
If I could do this for a living, I absolutely would.
That sounds like the
not
best
that,
job
I would
ever.
quit my
I don't
current
know.
job.
I think if this became my full-time living, I would write
Yeah.
movies also. I would definitely write movies and I'd definitely try and get them made. Like I wouldn't be able to just watch a movie and be like, well, here's my rating, 8 out of 10. That was fine.
No, but he
Or very good.
I
or
think
whatever.
he does
I
what
don't know.
I think he
just
does
don't
watch
like
the
that.
films multiple times if he thinks they're worthy of being watched multiple times. I think when
he's so
when he reviewed
serious
Phantom
about
Thread,
it as well. He's so serious about his movie reviews. It's like, just chill, man. Like the reviewers that I like do care deeply about movies, but at least they understand that this isn't the be all and end all. And it just comes across when he's talking about films that it is the be all and end all. And like,
do you know
movies
what
are
that in a
great
film critic?
and they're important. They're just not that important.
I don't know. I like it when a film critic, when they see
You're
a great
fired
film,
from this podcast.
Yeah, I like it when a film critic sees a really bad film and they say, this is terrible, like, this really offended me. And then when they see a good film, they think, oh, amazing, I've watched it 5 times in the cinema already. Everyone should go and watch it. Like I like when people really, really care about that sort of stuff. And
yeah.
given
maybe I'm
like the
being
way
silly.
you
I
spoke
could
about
be
films,
being very
Haroon, I thought
silly.
you'd be more on that end as well, rather than the more
I do
chill side.
care.
Like
I do
I've
care,
seen
but
you
just when I
critiquing The
hear
Dark
Mark
Knight,
Commode
and that's not a passionless.
No, it's not a passionless
should be.
endeavor, but it's not my job either, and it's not something I gave my whole life to, or will give my whole life to. But when you hear Mark, I think explicitly what I'm talking about is the Metropolis review, Megalopolis review.
Megalopolis. Yeah,
And-
you can't take that because I find that annoying, and I was going to bring that up
It's
as well.
so annoying,
but don't take
like,
that as an
facile.
example. But everyone's review of Megalopolis is the same, isn't it?
But you think
we're in the
somebody
minority for liking
you
Megalopolis.
think somebody so seasoned, whereby it's his absolute, like he lives and breathes movies, that he couldn't watch Megalopolis and think, wow, that was a very new thing.
The
that
world
I've
wasn't
seen.
ready for Megalopolis, man.
Not even Mark Commode, where it's all he thinks about every second of every day of every year for his entire life. It's
The
like,
world's not ready for that shit, man.
Alright.
I even though this episode's meant to be about Halloween, like original versus
Yeah,
series,
can we
I
get
have
back
no,
to
derailed
your
but
this
like-
so
driving me
much, I'm
crazy.
so sorry.
One more.
yeah, wait. One more sidetrack because neither Joe or myself have seen Megalopolis, and when I arrived in the Netherlands, I told him, right, please look up like your local cinemas timetable, because if it's available, I'd love to see Megalopolis so that we could discuss it on the podcast. Unfortunately, it's not available, and I will try and watch it when I get back to the UK before I return to the hinterland that is my local area, which I know Megalopolis is never going to come to.
The Netherlands is not yet ready for Megalopolis, turns out. 2 months it will be.
2 months away. But what just give us your takes on Megalopolis, because I know that Irun, when you went to see it, like the response you had initially, I got the impression that you thought it was a waste of time, because then you just said something along the lines of, "Well, that exists, that exists." But then you then went on to say, "I love Megalopolis. Like
So if you've been
it's such a
listening,
passion
Ben,
project."
there's a very like common pattern with me whereby I'll watch a movie, but then I'll hate it, but then over time, over you know, sleeps, fortnights, I'll think about it, ruminate over it, and it will marinate in my mind, and everything comes together slowly. So, and I've said this a number. I think surely I'm quoted on saying this previously in the podcast.
You have said this in
I-
the past about Barry
Barry
Lyndon.
Lyndon,
yeah, Barry
Hidden,
Lyndon. Yeah, exactly,
um,
exactly. Like a lot of movies
loads of stuff that
tend
I
to
can
sort of
think
stick
of.
with you, and then like it's a very common thing, and Matt knows this on first review for me. I just don't like them because I'm a bit slow, and but over time though they do tend to marinate, and yeah, I think for instance I remember watching Cachet, and I remember really hating the fact that I watched it, and then things clicked hours after, and then days went by, and then weeks went by, and months have gone by, and I still think about this film, and I've only seen it once. And that's sort of how they say, like, the very similar thing to Megalopolis in that sense. Like I watched it and I was just like, okay, why did I watch that? But then over time, like all of these incredible shots and visuals, and although some of the dialogue is incredibly corny and you can tell it's just a passion project, like I don't know, the lines sit with you. It's a like if we were living.
So go back to the club.
It's like if we were living in a Yorgos Lanthimos
Entitles
movie.
me.
It's like a
Yes.
it's a movie that somebody in a Yorgos Lanthimos movie would go and watch in the cinema. That's what Megalopolis is.
Yeah.
It really is like that. It's just like, how could this possibly exist? How could this possibly be real?
It's the least subtle, but also so bold that it becomes profound.
It is, yeah, exactly. Exactly that. Yeah.
You can't look at it and be like, what's this about? Because it's about what it's about. Metaphorically, yes. Like, it's not actually about we should make a substance called Megalon and build a city out of it. But it's
I don't know what's
But
worse, that or unobtainium.
Megalon.
Unobtainium. Unobtainium is a
Unobtainium's
Megalon, dude.
hilarious.
That's so funny.
It's great.
What does the
but
Megalon
it's so funny, man. Globes.
My favorite movie, my favorite fictional metal name is definitely Adamantium, though. I think it's got such a nice ring to it. No pun intended.
Oh, I've got a soft spot for that because obviously Wolverine.
Yeah. We will do the whole X-Men series at some point.
We will.
Right. No more Megalopolis. It's great. It's funny. Anyway, we're getting back to Halloween. Does anyone have any final thoughts on Halloween? And if not, does Haroon want to do a brief Halloween 2 rant?
Should we watch it?
Because I guess we might as well hear what you thought about the movie that you weren't meant to watch.
My final thoughts on Halloween is that I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I thought it was a chilling masterpiece. But you have to be in a mindset for it. You have to definitely be in a mindset for it to thoroughly enjoy it. Like when watching, for instance, Gladiator, me and Matt bought like wine and olives and like cured meats, and we sat there like Romans watching Gladiator, and I thought that was the best thing I ever did. And so
yeah, I do that whenever I watch like The Godfather as well. I'll get a bottle of wine or
yes.
something.
Yeah, cook some lasagna as well. That'd be good.
Cigars,
You got
yeah.
spaghetti bolognese and lasagna. Yeah. So yeah, with I don't know what to say on Halloween 2. Maybe I'll reserve my thoughts for another time. But I thought it was really bad. I thought it was really
Apparently, it's much more gory.
really,
Is that true?
yeah. They pick up the gore because the original it had a lot
Has
of
none
it had a lot of
at all.
criticism for not having enough gore and for being a horror that doesn't have any gore.
Really?
Yeah.
At the time.
At the time, yeah, they were just like, "Oh, we want more gore. It's supposed to be horror. There's no gore." And then the second one, yeah, they pick
That's
up the
crazy.
gore, they pick up jump scares, and the whole thing is this really like deflated version of what otherwise is, in my opinion, the original Halloween, kind of a fucking masterpiece, actually. So yeah, just like I don't know if it's like the beginning of terrible.
Does this
horror
explain
movie.
a lot? Apparently, John Carpenter wrote it over one night and a 6-pack of beer.
Wow, yeah, that does explain quite a lot. But that being said, Paul Thomas Anderson wrote Magnolia in like 2 weeks on a load of coke in a hut in the middle of nowhere. So I don't know what people were capable of, to be honest. Yeah. But yeah, my final thoughts, just the beginning of really deflated horror sequels, capitalism extract of film and art. So not very nice, not very scary, not very enjoyable. A couple of funny scenes here and there. Gore is the gore, like the not prosthetics, but the special effects. Is it called special effects when it's just visual?
Yeah.
It's still called special effects.
Yeah.
I think that's it's fine.
It's really that bad? Like that much of a
I didn't-
turnaround from the first one?
I didn't like it, man. I really didn't like it, but yeah.
Well, onto the movie we were meant to watch, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2007. Can I just say, Haroon, there was a moment where you were like, "Please, can we do the 2007 one?"
Yeah.
And then you didn't watch it.
It's fine.
Anyway, we're gonna spoil the whole thing and tell you about everything that happens
go on.
in it,
I'm
I
not
guess.
gonna watch it.
And you
That's
can
fine
be
with
like,
this.
"What? It's good. You should watch it." Well, it's all right. Yeah, you guys can talk first. Ben and Joe, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on Rob Zombie's Halloween 2007.
You go first, Joe.
Me. I think it took a lot of things in the original and did it differently, but in a pleasant way. I enjoyed how it spent more time on the opening and like the backstory of Michael Myers. I think the first one does well to just show him, say he's evil, and then carries on with the film. Whereas this one spends like 40
It works
minutes
perfectly
maybe,
for it.
Yeah, a good amount of
Yeah.
time.
to actually
Mm.
develop it, and that's something that I think is a nice bit of fluff to add to it.
So, can I just do a brief, just to get Haroon caught up? So I'll just do a brief synopsis of this movie. So it starts out with sort of the similar. Okay, we see a young Michael Myers, and it basically is more of a character study about how he gets to this point. So the first thing we see is him talking to his pet rat, which he then kills. Then we get into his home life. He's got a abusive stepdad, like very redneck vibes, very like trashy white trash
Chronic
vibes. They've all got long
may I
hair, like
ask? Maybe-
yes. He's disabled as well. He's had like some workplace injury, just like in Chronicle, and he's abusive to Michael Myers. His mum's a stripper. He gets bullied at school by Junie Cortez from Spy Kids. And did you guys not clock that was him?
The guy with curly hair.
Yeah.
See, I thought he looked like Aaron Taylor Johnson from Kick-Ass. But
True.
so
He does a
who's
bit.
actually? So Cortez from Spy Kids.
It's yeah, I forgot the actor's name, but he's married to Megan Trainor, and they have twin toilets where they shit together.
Nice.
Anyway, so he gets bullied, and it's sort of generic in this sense. It's what you'd expect. His sister is a bit of a thought, as the kids call them. And he has these violent tendencies. He's getting in trouble at school a lot from getting in fights with these bullies. And then we see him snap. He goes and beats up the bully with a big stick, and then goes home and kills his sister and his stepdad in a very violent way. This is the opening like 30-40 minutes. He's then institutionalized, and we see him with Dr. Loomis as he's trying to get through to him. He keeps running back for a visit. But he talks the whole time, which is very, very, very different to the original. Until one day he stops talking. We see him 15 years later. He's now 6'5" and the biggest man you've ever seen. Wait, did you guys watch the unrated version, or did you watch the theatrical cut?
I think
The way you'll tell, was there a sexual assault in his prison cell?
Watch that one.
yes, there was that one.
Disturbing.
That's the director's cut then.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay.
So So in the theatrical cut, they just transfer him to a prison and he breaks out and kills everyone. But in this one, in that one that you watched, uh, yeah, some prison guards bring in a woman and start fucking sexually assaulting her, and then he goes crazy. I can't remember. I watched it quite a while ago. Um, then it plays out beat for beat Halloween, except Laurie Strode is his sister, like in Halloween 2 that you've seen, Haroon. And it's pretty much beat for beat, exactly the same. Like even with all the same kills, like the stabbing him into a wall, the headstone on the thing. Do you want to see my boobies? And then he's got the ghost sheet on. And then it sort of changes at the end, but it's pretty generic. Anyway, now you're caught up.
Okay. Is that
let's
that
go
GoPro
Let's
scene?
go back to Joe.
At any point, because we didn't really touch on the original GoPro scene.
GoPro.
Yeah, where you can see through the sort of cutout of.
Oh.
You know what I'm talking about now? Of course,
No.
the very start of the Halloween movie.
No.
The very start of the original Halloween movie.
Yeah, there isn't that. There's not many POV shots or anything like that. In the Rob Zombie one, it's so different stylistically. There's so much it's just grimy. But yeah, sorry, I've been rambling for time. So sorry, Joe, for interrupting.
I enjoyed it. I think it takes
Just
a
need to catch
different
up
direction from the original, where it has a lot more happens, a lot more people die. I think it loses a bit of the suspense because so much more happens, but it makes up for it by sort of twisting the story a bit and taking it in its own direction.
Did you find it really funny?
Because I was cackling the whole time. I do think it was funny at points. Yeah,
I didn't find it funny. No, I did not find it funny. I mean, I found Danny Trejo funny because he's a funny presence. And the way he was, I don't know, like, hey Michael, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah,
just like it was just.
I loved how
character.
like they didn't, even though it said 15 years later, they didn't need to say it's 15 years later, because I think one of the first shots you see is actually Danny Trejo, and they've deliberately dyed his mustache grey and his hair grows up, and he's speaking in a tiny different way.
3 months from retirement.
Yeah.
No, I just
they done him dirty.
I just thought there were so many lines in this, whether it's the three girls walking down the pavement and the way they're talking to each other.
There's a bit where Dr. Loomis
It's very
clings onto his leg
obnoxious.
and he gets dragged along by Michael.
Yeah, so he grabs onto his leg. So it's very dramatic. He's like, "I'm going to stop you," and Michael doesn't even turn around and stab him. He just literally brushes him off as if he's just absolutely no relevance whatsoever. But no, I actually found I found this film a lot funnier than the original, and I think it's because I don't know. It's just the way people spoke, like especially that sort of redneck white trash stepdad, and yeah, just how
Yeah.
how shamelessly like leering he was over his own stepdaughter, and I felt like it was
Yeah, I guess I find it funny in that regard because it is so obnoxious and white trash, and it's sort of funny, if you're not annoyed at it. But I sort of was more like, oh my god, like how fucking, like how obnoxious. But I get you, and that's what I like about. I'll talk about Rob Zombie's other movies in a sec, but that is what I like about them. But I found watching it back to back with Halloween, the original, it was very jarring. So I'd seen it before, like a year or two ago, and I liked it a lot, having Halloween in my distant memory at that point. I was like, this is cool. But watching them back to back, I was like, fucking hell.
One thing I will say is that I
vibe.
like the fact. So obviously, many of the events are quite similar to the first one, but like you said, they definitely provide you with a lot more context around Mike Myers and why he behaves like he does. And I actually did like that fact, because even though, like you said, it does humanize him in the sense that he doesn't just kill a random stranger; he kills a school bully, and yeah, even though like you shouldn't kill a school bully just for bullying you, like there's that like added level of sympathy there. And then obviously there's the really horrible stepdad, and then there's the fact that he kills the two rapists. But I think despite all of that, it didn't. At no point did it change the way I thought about Mike Myers during the film. Like, I still think the guy is pretty evil, and I think you can see that as early as well, I mean, literally as early as when he's killing all the people, especially when he's killing his sister and the person she's sleeping with.
for nothing.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
for what? Like because you didn't take you trick or treating. Like yeah, I don't think I can really sympathize
Yeah.
with that character anymore.
I think I think to that point, it probably is more it delves deeper or takes literally the subtext or the what's been put on Halloween 78 about. So I don't know if you know about this, but people talk a lot about it's punishment for promiscuity, right? So everyone in that film is fucking, and then Michael Myers comes along and kills him. And John Carpenter said that's not what he intended. He sort of just needed them to be doing something. He was like, "Oh, how can they be distracted while Michael Myers comes and kills them?" But it's taken a form of its own, especially with Friday the 13th, and all slasher movie lore has basically built off this idea of if you have sex, you die. I mean, that's what fucking Scream's about as well. But this film, I do think it sort of contextualized that in a very interesting way. So he's getting bullied because his mum's a stripper, right? And then his sister is going off to fuck her boyfriend instead of taking him trick or treating. So I think he has just a very disturbed view of sexuality, and I think that works well for this film. But yeah, sorry for interrupting.
No, that's interesting though, because it doesn't just work with slasher films. Like it follows, like if you sleep with the wrong person,
Yeah,
then the monster goes after
yeah.
you. Yeah, that's really interesting.
And
Actually.
Bram Stoker's Dracula, we were talking about it last
Oh
week,
yeah.
is like a sort of commentary on STDs and stuff.
Mm.
It's all been there in the I guess in the roots of horror.
So why do you think that is then? Like, why is horror? I don't know. Maybe not. I wouldn't go as far as to say anti-sex, but it's like the fact that many horror films choose to kill off the people who are sleeping with each other.
That's a really interesting question.
Conservatism is scary. I don't know because it's.
But you see, I
can't
wouldn't
imagine
typically
it's
think
ever.
of the horror film directors as people who are like small C
Okay.
conservative. If
So-
anything,
so-
I'd imagine that
But Michael Myers is a murderer, so
mm,
he's the baddie. So I would say that it's critical of it. So I don't think they're anti-sex. I think that the character is anti-sex.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say
Oh,
it's the absolute
That's
opposite.
why he's
yeah.
the villain.
yeah.
So I think horror definitely plays off of what subconsciously cultures are very scared of, and plays off taboos, things like sex, definitely racism as well. Get Out is a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
What other great horror movies are there when it comes to these sorts of? Oh my god, religion, Catholicism, Christianity. The taboo of not conforming to what's otherwise considered the absolute cornerstone of society, which is the cross, Jesus himself. I mean, that's what so much of horror is based off of. And of course it is, because, I mean, Christianity is like the perfect thing to base it off of. Hell is a horrifying concept. I do think about this so much. Like, hell is the scariest thing conceivable to a human being. Imagine an infinite amount of pain and suffering. An infinite amount of pain and suffering is what you
for a finite
for a
life
finite life
for
a finite life that you live. If you don't conform to this frankly outdated textbook on how to live life, you could potentially suffer the worst thing conceivable to us. And then of course
eternal suffering.
That's by the way, that is far worse than eternal bliss. Like, not worse, but like in terms of magnitude. In terms of but like eternal bliss isn't as good as eternal suffering is bad. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Oh, I get what you mean. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I'd rather like eternal.
I think with eternal bliss, like it just does seem quite boring, but like eternal suffering is just horrible.
Eternal mid.
But yeah, I mean so much of horror, like it's like possession horror, isn't it? Right? It's like 90% possession horror that comes from the fear that is written into the Old and New Testament, like demons and possession and hell and the devil and all of that shit. it's like woven into the fabric of culture, right? And so how easy could it be, to make a horror movie out of that? But that's not necessarily still on track with like subconscious cultural fears, I guess. Maybe it does play on that taboo against what people believe in if they do happen to be religious into Abrahamic religions, but necessarily, I think, thematically speaking, with regards to sort of sex and racism, maybe that whole horror born from the trope of demonic possession from the Bible isn't maybe doesn't align with that. I don't know.
It's worth bringing up, but back to Halloween as well. It's so heavily tied to suburbia and the escape of the mean city, but the horror comes from this, especially in the original Halloween, because it doesn't quite work with Rob Zombie's Halloween. The horror comes from the least expected place, which is a suburban child outside Chicago, which is obviously famously very violent city. And white flight happened, and everyone moved to suburbia. And it's the horror from within that where it's not so expected, or at least the people who left the city due to racism would. It's just very tied to that. The subversion of expectation of suburban life and how this can create something just as ugly.
The sheriff even says a line in it, which is something along the lines of, "You can't have a serial killer here; it would be a slaughter. It's just families on this road," which
exactly
is like vocalizing your point. I think even.
I didn't even clock that.
So it's very interesting. Oh, I can't believe you fell asleep. Man.
I sleep to so many movies. Movies put you to sleep, man.
It's like an hour and a half, man. It's literally 90 minutes on the dot.
Yeah.
But not to keep running. Feel free to cut me off at any point. But I do just to get back to Rob Zombie's Halloween. I don't like shot for shot remakes. So I'm so happy that it does take so much liberty with creating a new vibe for Michael. Well,
yeah, I could. That sounds nice.
It's good. It's good that it doesn't just try do it again. But when the point in the film where it does just do it again, that's when I was like so bored. I was like I've just seen this yesterday, better than what Rob Zombie's doing. So I loved all the changes, and I hated all the what was probably studio notes of like, oh yeah, then you got to do Halloween in the middle of this.
The checklist.
Yeah.
So
it's pretty much that.
Go on, sorry.
It's the hour and a half plot of Halloween. Okay, take away the young Michael Myers bit. It's that section, the whole Laurie Strode section, condensed into about half an hour of the film. It just does the whole plot. I just find it so fucking boring. But what were you saying?
Is it just a capitalism corporate movie?
No, because Rob Zombie is he's a visionary in his own way. Like he is visionary. Is that like a strongly positive word? Because I wouldn't go that far. But he is a unique filmmaker who does follow his vision. So I wouldn't say so. But he said he had a hellish time making it because the studio was so fucking annoying about it, and they were fucking him off. Like at the end, they were like, before they released it, they were like, "Go away, like this is gonna bomb." And then when it did really well, they were like, "Oh, come back and make the second one." Like he had a shit time making it. But he did his own thing for sure. No, not yet. I'm gonna watch it probably tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, I'm wondering.
I've heard it's very good.
First one.
Well, there's no Halloween 3, so I'm guessing it did less money. But apparently it's really good, and it's like a quite complex and deep exploration of like trauma, from what I've read about it. But again, I've only got the theatrical cut.
Yeah, again, like themes for horror, trauma's
cut.
perfect. Any sort of negative emotion that's embedded into the underbelly of society is perfect for horror to explore, right? Trauma is like incredibly common. So you got trauma, race. What was the other one? Religion, grief, of course, grief.
Yeah, religion.
There was one more we talked about.
Like prude sexuality
yeah,
stuff. I don't
sex.
fucking know. Yeah, sex.
Anything on the underbelly of society is
there.
like immaculate for horror to really
Yeah,
say.
don't look at this. Anything you can't acknowledge
Mm.
or like society deems like a touchy subject.
Bad thoughts that you've had ratified by your teachers in class, basically, is perfect.
Ben, do you have any more thoughts on Halloween? Because I feel like you've not said much. I've sort of just been ranting there for the last 20 minutes about this film.
I mean, not too much to say about Rob Zombie's film. Like, I do agree with you that it definitely is not a rip-off remake. Like, it definitely has its own style, and I think you mentioned before about how the language of horror has changed dramatically since Halloween to the remake of Halloween. I think you can actually see that contrast really well illustrated between the two films because in Rob Zombie's Halloween, there's music plays a much bigger part when the film's trying to scare you by assisting with the jump scare, and there are also a few moments when I can't remember which person's being killed in this moment, but it's when Mike Myers is smashing somebody against a metal frame and the camera is positioned on the floor, and the camera actually shakes whenever he actually strikes the person against the metal
It's
frame.
common.
And I think that's quite different to the original Halloween, which I think the camera didn't really move
Oh,
an
yeah.
awful lot with the action.
Very steady
Yeah,
as well. Like when
yeah.
it is moving.
Yeah,
Sure.
but no, I did actually prefer the
And-
Rob Zombie film, and I
Not that I've
I
seen
wish
it, but
that we were able
guess
to
I'm
watch
still
both these films
outraged.
in the cinema. And I wish we were able to watch both these films in the cinema because I think with horror, like obviously every film typically you want to watch it in the cinema because that's like what it was made for, and rather than just watching it on some TV screen at home.
Yeah.
But I think with horror in particular, I think it's the genre that tends to benefit the most from horror.
I can
Because
always
when you
get
consider-
into like, regardless of the format that I'm watching a movie in, like I could watch a movie with a laptop in bed and get the same sort of like a very similar-ish experience than if I'm watching it in a cinema. I guess that's just me. Like I've got a decent-ish imagination.
I disagree.
I'm the complete opposite.
I can
Like,
still watch
love
a movie
cinema.
anywhere.
No,
Yeah,
I
but
can
it
watch
just
it
hits
on
different
a
in the cinema
computer.
for me. I can do it anywhere, but yeah, same. But it's not. It doesn't hit the same because you can't possibly even distract. You can't pause it and go piss. Like you can do that with sitting on your bed with a laptop. You're so sucked in the cinema,
sign
and
a
it's also
contract.
a shared experience. For real, and if someone screams, you hear that. Like you're. It's a collective experience that you're all having together.
Yeah, like when I went to watch Longlegs with my mates and also Alien Romulus, I think it definitely added when somebody directly in front of you or just to your side, suddenly jumped up. Like
You
the
can
legs
feel
were-
tension in the
me
room.
all
Yeah.
through Long Legs.
No, it does help. And I think you mentioned as well that you can't pause and go for a piss, but it's not just that. Like there'll be a number of occasions that I'll admit it was me mainly going to Joe saying, like, is this film really funny to you or not? Like you just
that a joke?
yeah, like you just can't do that in the cinema. Like if you just can't turn
Yeah,
to your mates and
true.
have a chat. So I think for me it definitely changes things big time. And so whenever there's an opportunity to see a horror film, especially in the cinema, then I'll definitely go and take it.
Right. Sounds like we're wrapping up here. Does anyone want to give? Should we give our number scores? Should we put a number on this
Scores.
piece of art?
We do, but like
Cool.
it means different things to different people. But yeah, knock yourself out, Joe.
Out of
You
what
can
number?
Oh,
you
10.
can
Okay.
conscientiously object.
Yeah, you can conscientiously object as a guest. You don't have to give Art the number
I think
score.
David Batty did. Yeah.
Oh, did he?
No, he
Oh,
definitely
yeah.
gave it.
I
He
can't
gave
remember
two
if he did or
scores. He
not.
gave
I'll give a
two
number.
numerical
Do you
scores.
want to give a number?
Okay.
Okay.
for
Well, then you
Art to
can't
and
conscientiously.
Nah, you're still
object.
able to, Joe. I believe in you. Be strong.
You'll get a number. You'll get a number.
I don't morally agree with numbers, but we do it here.
I think-
and it's funny. It's
yeah.
funny mostly to hear what Ben gives, like
Yeah, I
Taxi
think
Driver,
that's
and
probably-
he's like 2 out of 10 for
Come
Taxi
and
Driver. It
Come
just
and
has
See
to
was
be
a
done.
2. Taxi Driver was a 3. Wild. Paprika was like a
Oh, yeah.
1 or
Ben,
something.
you can't give.
So again,
number,
like
it's
the,
really-
the thing is, I'm only giving
Yeah,
it
Joe,
in terms of
tell
how,
him.
like how much I liked it, and I just
We
didn't
can't
like
get through
Taxi
to him.
Driver.
No,
Ben,
sorry, Matt.
can
I'm
I-
interrupting you here.
Can I make a point about this, Ben?
I'm
Ben,
making a
no,
point
no,
here.
no,
I'm
no,
making a
no.
point. Joe, you're there with him now. You're his friend. Can you please try and get through to him about Taxi Driver? It's outrageous.
Good.
It's not on, is it?
I
Ben,
agree.
can I say
I'm
this?
not even arguing that it's like a bad film. I'm telling you how much I enjoyed it as an experience. I just thought,
Why don't you
this,
like
this
it?
But
really
enjoy.
boring.
This is what I need to say, Ben. Ben.
Yeah, I just thought-
Enjoyment is a
I
word
just-
that
Sorry, what were you saying?
So,
enjoyment means how much joy it brings you, right? So let's say you're watching Schindler's List, a Holocaust movie. You can't get joy from that. So you can't enjoy, definitionally, you can't enjoy Schindler's List. But does that make it a bad movie?
No,
No.
no, and I agree. And that's the thing. I'm saying that Taxi Driver. I'm not saying it's a bad movie. It's just like, what did this film do for you?
But it's miserable, so you obviously don't get joy from a miserable. You don't get joy. You can't enjoy something so profoundly miserable.
Like, if you think of a film, like, oh, I'm trying to think of a film that's miserable, but I still enjoy it. I need to get back to you on that one.
What about horror
Unless you can
movies?
think
What
of
about
any
all
films.
horror
Okay,
movies?
let's do these numbers. Let's do these numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you can enjoy horror. I enjoy Terrifier. I
Yeah.
do enjoy when
Oh, yeah, and to be
Art the
fair,
Clown skins someone, when he rips the flesh off someone's skull. I'm having a great time.
yeah, and actually, yeah, you just reminded me. So I love Sinister. It Follows. I really liked Long Legs, and they were not
Yeah,
like
bad place to
pleasant
be then.
experiences. But I guess the crucial difference is that with those three films, I was never bored. I think the problem with Taxi Driver was that I was bored for a lot of it, and it was only the final third where I thought, oh, now I'm interested in what's happening.
Also, there is. I'm sorry to hang on Schindler's List here, but there is actually lots of catharsis that happens.
Okay, that was a bad example because I've not seen Schindler's
Oh,
List.
okay. But really seriously horrible, sad movies with sad endings that are sad from start to finish, that are completely miserable, like The Witch, for instance. They don't but they do bring you joy. I don't know. It's complicated. It's actually complicated.
I use Schindler's List as an example because the Holocaust was
No,
real.
but The Witch is a
So,
perfect example because
but I haven't seen.
there is not a single moment of levity
But
in
it's-
The Witch whatsoever from start to finish. It is a completely intolerably
But
sad
horror
film.
brings you visceral emotions.
There isn't much
So,
horror.
but again,
though,
I
in that
wouldn't say
movie.
enjoy.
It's just like a really
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the Holocaust, and the film that comes to mind. I haven't seen Schindler's List, but I have seen The Zone of Interest, and that was a film that, yeah, I didn't enjoy.
didn't
At no point did I
enjoy.
feel any joy whatsoever. But
No
that
joy.
film,
You can't.
Yeah,
yeah,
you're not
but
supposed
like
to,
it,
yeah,
but it
exactly,
did make
yeah.
me feel something, and in that sense,
But yeah, you can
yeah.
you can
I think the
appreciate it and
problem with
like
Taxi
it.
Driver was that I was watching it for a lot of time, and I was just thinking, like, why am I watching this? Like, what's the point of the scene? Whereas The Zone of Interest, I see, like, they're pretty much documenting the invasion committed by the Nazis and their families.
Wasn't it? It's weird. It's weird. Like Matt has definitely touched on some sort of strange philosophical concept of movies, whereby I know I didn't like. I don't feel happy watching Zone of Interest, but I know it was an amazing, incredible, profound movie, and I like it because of that. Do you understand? Like it's the sort of
Yeah,
same
no, and I do get that
retrospective
with some films.
review that I get with a lot of movies, right? In the moment, I'm not enjoying it, but retrospectively, that was an absolute masterpiece. It was shot beautifully. It's completely unique. The acting was incredible. The colors looked amazing. Like I've never seen anything like it, and it spoke to me in a profound way. I didn't like it whilst I was watching it because you're getting dragged through, the Nazis' perspective living outside of a death camp. But retrospectively, it's actually a complete masterpiece, and you can thoroughly enjoy the viewing experience still. Like, yeah.
Okay, I can.
So I've just googled enjoy definition, and it's to take delight or pleasure in.
I think
And I don't
didn't
enjoy the zone of interest.
But I did like it a lot as a
No,
movie,
I agree.
right?
But I think the fact that it does something
it's
to
perfect.
me,
It's
like it actually makes me
perfect
feel
movie.
something. Yeah, no. Like I agree that when it
I'm
comes
sort of,
to
being,
its objective, like it does it really well. And yeah, you're not going to enjoy it, but the whole point is that you're not meant to enjoy it, and you're meant to feel this sort of sense of revulsion, and not just revulsion, but it's almost like
It's
it's
the
almost
meaning
disbelief
of the
at just
movie.
how
I'm sort of
It's
being
the
pedantic
meaning of
Nazis
the
were.
with my
movie
comment.
that speaks to me that I enjoy. Say similar-ish to Taxi Driver. Ish. I actually like the viewing experience of Taxi Driver. I like being immersed in New York. I like the weird dialogue. I like following the shocking character.
Can I actually give what I think is the most worthy comparison to Taxi Driver? And it's not just because it's set in New York, but um, well, actually, maybe that is going to be one of the
Batman
reasons.
Begin.
No, no, not Batman Begin, but it's going to be Uncut Gems because I really don't like that film. And that film makes me feel really uncomfortable from the opening shot.
I love that.
But
It's a perfect.
yeah, no, but this is the thing. I think
It's
when it comes
perfect.
to what Uncut Gems
Best
tries to
cinema
do,
experience of my life.
when it comes to what Uncut Gems tries to do, which is make you feel really, really stressed, it
Oh,
does that
it's
really
so
well.
good.
Yeah.
Like it achieves that objective super
But
well.
it's
I just
like,
find that
but
personally
you get to
unenjoyable
experience
movie.
all the stress with zero consequence. That's the fun part. That's the thrill of it, right?
okay. But so first of all, I
That's
don't.
why we like horror.
That's
I
why you
so
like roller coasters.
yeah, but I think it's weird
Yeah.
because with horror, when I get really scared, I enjoy it, but for some reason with Uncut Gems, I didn't. But
This is going to turn into a
here's the
therapy
main
session
difference
for Ben. I
between
swear
say a
to
film like
God.
Uncut Gems and Taxi Driver for me when it comes to my experience of it. Uncut Gems makes me feel really uncomfortable because of just how well the Safdie
Exhilarating.
brothers make you as the audience member feel stressed. The problem with Taxi Driver is not that I didn't like the way it made me feel; it's the fact that it just made me feel nothing. Like I'd be watching it, I just thought, I'm really bored. Like this doesn't make me feel happy. It's not making me feel
Joe,
really
just
scared, really
just
stressed.
try.
Like
We've
it's just
tried.
like
We
we,
have
we, we, we can
tried.
definitely talk about it off camera
I don't
afterwards.
want to talk about this. I'm going to give Halloween a 9. I really enjoyed it. I think it's borderline perfect. And Rob Zombie Halloween gets a 7 from me. I think it's a worthy remake.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, fun film. Good recommendation.
Thank you for bringing us back.
Yeah,
thank you. That was a
for-
perfect segue.
Exactly.
Um,
And
wait, did you rate original Halloween?
Original Halloween 9. I think it's
What?
borderline perfect. Great film. Loved it.
Joe, we'll have you
If
on
I'd
any
watched it in
Ben?
the 1970s, mad.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joe, you're welcome back.
Oh, thank you.
You may well replace me one day.
You agreed with us.
Um,
You're welcome back.
What do you think, Ben?
I'm going to give the original Halloween a 7 because even though I didn't find it very scary,
We like that.
I
we love
appreciate
that.
that.
Respectable.
I think given like when it
Given
was
that I'm
made
standing here with Joe
and
and
what it
you
actually
got-
did.
The parts you were awake for, you give a 7.
Okay.
And Rob Zombie, yeah, I think Rob Zombie actually did a good job of stamping his own mark on this. I also found it funnier, but yeah, I also like the fact that he, really gave a very different twist on it compared to the original, which I always appreciate in a filmmaker, even if I don't necessarily like that film. Although in this case with Rob Zombie, I did actually prefer it to the original, so I'm going to give Rob Zombie's Halloween an 8.
Wow.
I really liked it.
Um, I'll go next, seeing as Haroon did a different movie. I'm with Joe completely. 1-to-1. I've got Halloween as a 9 out of 10. If I watch that in the cinema, maybe in 3 to 5 years, I will give that a 10. I'm sure. But for now, 9 out of 10. Really good. Spooky. And Rob Zombie, yeah, 7 for me. Could be a 6, but probably a 7 for now. I enjoyed it a lot. Fucking how sick was. He's such a imposing force. I love that he's so massive in this one. He's scary as fuck.
That was a really good
But
choice.
yeah, so
I
7 out
imagine
of
Danny
10.
Trejo is quite a big guy. And
Yeah.
then he stands next to him and he's...
And I like the fact as well that I didn't mention this before, but I like the fact that you can't see his face. Like the hair is just so overgrown. That's
Yeah,
really
Even
yeah,
when he
yeah.
does it on the mask.
Very
you
yeah,
can see
creepy.
it.
yeah.
That's
I really like that aspect.
Haroon,
Yeah.
Halloween 2, I guess.
Halloween 2 is going to get a nice little 2 out of 10. I think nothing of this movie. I don't recommend it.
Oh, so just like Come and See.
Yeah.
On par with Come
on
and See.
par with Ben's opinion of Come and See, my opinion of Halloween 2 1981 is definitely tangential. The original Halloween, though, for me, I'd really want to give this a 10. And I will. I think I'm going to give it a 10. I loved it. I thought it was perfect. I thought it was truly
perfect 10.
fantastic. But again, it's only a 10 from the mindset that I put myself in when I watched a movie from 1977, right? 78, sorry. I think there are, like, if you don't really immerse yourself in it, there are some, like, really silly sound effects that happen every now and then. Even at the start, when Mike Myers does his first murder on his sister, there's like a delayed sound effect between the knife going in and her screaming, and her screaming isn't very like convincing whatsoever. It just sounds like she's been told to shout, and she's only been paid like $5 for it. It's like,
Michael.
yeah, it sounds terrible. But that's if you're not really like putting yourself into it.
Can I bring in one nitpick on that scene as well? I hate the way he looks at his hand while he's got the knife. I'm like, who's doing that? He's like looking at, like, what? Yeah. But it's a cool shot.
I love it. What can I say?
Yeah, it's a cool shot. That's just a nitpick. Just before we wrap up, guys, this is mostly a Joe. Have you seen House of a Thousand Corpses?
Yeah. I say one little side note is I was surprised how toned down Halloween felt compared to House of a Thousand Corpses. It seems like he was very much don't make it as horrible as that film. I like it. I think
I love that film. I watched that the other day, and that's what got me wanting to watch these Rob Zombie Halloween movies. It's so fun, and like apparently he just pitched it like on a whim. He just made it up as he went along while he was pitching it to the studio. But there's so many like crazy choices. Like when the girl escapes and she goes into the graveyard in the back of their house, and she just starts hearing all the ghosts. I'm just like, Jesus Christ. And then when Dr. Satan shows up at the end, I'm like, as if it goes here. Like, I was not expecting it to go there. Anyway, big recommend for you guys, everyone involved. Watch House of a Thousand Corpses. Also really fucking funny. Ben, more intentionally funny than Halloween 2007, I would imagine. But yeah, that was just a side note. I just wanted to talk about that. Fucking fantastic.
Would you say he's one of your favourite horror directors, or not?
Oh, I've only seen the Halloween. I've seen House of a Thousand Corpses and The Devil's Rejects. And I started a film. He's got a film called like 31 or something like that. I started that, and it was a cool opening scene. But I was just like, I'm not gonna watch this. But no, he's cool. I don't know any of his music either. I listened to Dragula the other day when I watched House of a Thousand Corpses. It's alright, but I've never. I don't know. But he's cool. I like the guy. I saw him on Joe Rogan, and he seems cool. Not that I watched Joe Rogan. I was just there researching House of a Thousand Corpses.
To be ashamed
Is
of.
the
Good Zack Snyder
interview worth watching?
I just watched the 2 clips about the Halloween. He was just talking about Halloween and how he had troubles making that, and House of a Thousand Corpses. But it's very insightful.
The very best Joe Rogan interview is with Zack Snyder. That's the best one I've ever seen.
All right.
We're wrapping up. Do we know which 2 films we're doing next week? Because we're back on the Conversing the Family series.
I want to watch The Dark Knight. 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 I really want to watch.
We'll think about it.
We'll think about it.
Have you watched Tenet yet?
We're off.
We haven't.
We're taking a little break.
I could watch Tenet.
We said Tenet last week.
We're going to watch it with Primer. Have you heard of Primer?
No.
Oh, I haven't heard of it either.
Yeah, let's do Tenet.
Apparently,
I'm sure it's not nearly as
annoying.
good.
I hate it.
This guy loves Tenet. If you can't,
we've had a good run of fun movies that we've all enjoyed. Let's watch some movies that we're not going to enjoy. Let's watch Tenet and Primer.
Yeah. Let's have a miserable episode.
I actually really like Tenet. I just think it's really cool.
I do love it. I like it as well.
I'm excited to give it another go.
We'll get
I'm genuinely excited.
On the next
all right.
Nice.
That does it, guys.
Awesome.
Get the fuck out of here.
Really entertaining.
Good episode.
I'm going to listen to your old ones to see if you ever converted Ben from liking an old Christopher Nolan film, because I don't think it's possible. But I'd like to see you try.
All right. Adios.
Appreciate the support.